Rwandan Prime Minister Edwin Ngirente, former Ethiopian Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn, and their excellencies. Please welcome them to the hall. Welcome. Welcome. Welcome once again, excellencies. Welcome everybody, please be seated. Welcome to Kigali, Rwanda, the land of 1,000 hills, or as they say here on the ground, Murakaza neza. I think that video deserves a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Remarkable Rwanda. I couldn't think of a better place to hold a summit like this, the first of its kind ever, virtual summit for the African Green Revolution Forum. Thank you so much for joining us. A lot of people are dialing in online as we speak. As I said, my colleague Femi Oke will be joining us from London very shortly. But in the meantime, Right Honorable Edwin Ngirente, Prime Minister of Rwanda, His Excellency Haile Mariam Desalegn, former Prime Minister of Ethiopia and Chair of the AGRF Partners Group, Honorable Dr. Geraldine Mukeshimana, Minister of Agriculture and Animal Resources here in Rwanda, Dr. Agnes Kalibata, President of the AGRA, Honorable Ministers here present and watching online, Excellencies, Ambassadors and distinguished guests, members of the AGRF Partners Group, ladies and gentlemen, and all of you joining us today online. Welcome once again to Kigali, Rwanda. Now, why are we here? Again, please direct your attention to the screen in front of you.
Africa's cities and food markets are rapidly expanding. Urban areas now include more than 421 million people. This number is expected to reach 1 billion by 2040. We need significant transformations in our food systems to achieve Africa's goal laid out in the Malabo Declaration and the SDGs by 2030. How do we feed our cities with nutritious diets with an ever-growing number of consumers, diversity of incomes, diversity in diets, and therefore diversity in demand for food? This year's AGRF Virtual Summit 2020 has brought together thousands of those on the front lines working tirelessly to maintain and rebuild our food systems in the midst of a pandemic, locust invasions, climate change, and more. Heads of state, heads of government, ministers, business leaders, farmer organizations, development institutions, and implementing partners will focus on delivering on 4 key outcomes: resilience, investing in enterprises and innovations to build a more sustainable and inclusive future; nutritious food, creating demand for African products that fuel diverse and healthy diets with the safety and quality every consumer needs; markets and trade, building interconnected Africa markets that create opportunities right from rural to urban supermarkets; and lastly, but certainly not least, food systems. We will reimagine, redefine, and rebuild the food systems Africa wants and be part of a multi-stakeholder vision for the continent and the world on the future of food. There has never been a time when innovation and collaboration is more needed. Now is the moment to build back better for life, for health, for livelihoods, for the climate, for the planet, for our shared prosperity. When Africa feeds its cities, it can feed the world and grow the continent.
It's my honor and privilege to be coming back here to Rwanda on behalf of AGRF and AGRF partners. We are having this AGRF at a very difficult time, as you might know. COVID has made it very difficult for all of us, but we've found ways. We decided that if there's one thing we are going to do this year, is to try to find ways of being resilient. In fact, today's theme is about resilience in all walks of life. So here, this year we said, we need to beat this. And the best way to beat it is to have an AGRF all the same. So we came here to Rwanda and we're having the AGRF, and we're extremely grateful to the government of Rwanda for accepting our challenge and taking on the AGRF with us, but also for putting such great measures in place, like you have. Just seeing so many people in one room and yet feeling so safe is unbelievable. Sometimes coming here in this country, you feel like you've come to a place where there's no COVID. I hope you feel the same, because immediately after all the check-ins, you just want to take a deep breath and say, okay, finally there's a place that there's no COVID. That's how we feel for many of us that come in from the other side. So I really then want to take an opportunity to thank Minister Geraldine, because we've walked this journey together, and Nelly from RCB. We got a lot of support from both of you and your teams, and we're extremely grateful for that support. And Your Excellency, I just wanted to recognize the support the government of Rwanda has given us coming this far. So we are extremely grateful, and we really hope that this is something that will continue. Now, why Rwanda? You would remember that last year in Ghana, we had a big ceremony where Rwanda was selected to be the host of the AGRF, at least for the next 5 years. Now, what this means is every year we have to find a country where we are going to host the AGRF. The AGRF is a continental forum, and every year we have to decide where we're going to host it. So we decided that we need to have a home and away model. A home and away model allows us some degree of predictability in the environment of doing an event like this. So we put out a competition there, and the government of Rwanda did win that competition, and we are proud to be here from a home and away perspective. So from now on, at least for the next 5 years, every other conference will be happening in Rwanda, and the following year we'll be going to another country. So I just wanted to say as a Rwandan that I'm very proud that the government put its weight behind this. I must say, Jeff, our next biggest competitor was Kenya, but we beat you this time. Yes. Now, AGRF, this far, the AGRF started in 2010 as a follow-up to AGRA. AGRA was launched in 2006 by the late Kofi Annan, former UN Secretary General, really saddened and feeling, I guess, leaving the UN system, feeling down about the fact that Africa was was the only continent where productivity was still very low, where farmers were still struggling. So he got a few partners in a room, including the former president of Nigeria, Obasanjo, the former president of Ethiopia, Meles Zenawi, and a number of others. And they agreed to launch an institution that would have a continental perspective, and that's how AGRA was launched. And AGRA's work was really to focus on how to ensure that, that the things that other people take for granted, things like improved seed that are so important to farmers, things like fertilizers that are so important to farmers, and markets, that these would have a mechanism of defining how they work. He called it a uniquely African green revolution because he understood very well that a number of places, mistakes had already been made. This is not the place where you get to make a mistake. This is the place where you get to learn from other people's mistakes and design an African solution. So that's how AGRA was designed. Then we realized that to be able to bring the continent together, we needed a convening. So that's how AGRF was designed. And this year, we celebrate 10 years of AGRF. And unfortunately, 2 years ago, just before he was able to come to the AGRF in Rwanda, Kofi Annan passed away, but again, we celebrate the opportunity he left behind for us and the institution and the forum that we are celebrating today. This year's forum does two things. Besides overcoming COVID, or being here despite COVID, this year's forum focuses on feeding African cities. Because we do recognize the opportunity that African cities present, we as a continent are the fastest urbanizing continent, which is huge, but we do also recognize that there are challenges where we don't take advantage of that market. Many of those are lack of what experts call wholesale markets, or even when you go to the West, what you see as supermarkets, grocery stores and all that. Lack of those actually means that farmers don't have predictability of markets. The other thing that experts talked about was lack of competitiveness of the agricultural sector itself, but also lack of competitiveness of agricultural commodities. They also talked about food safety issues and how it is causing us to have major non-tariff barriers in our trade environment. And they talked about so many other things. So we saw this as an opportunity for us to come here and highlight the market opportunity. It's a $250 billion market. It's 5 times bigger than our export markets. It's a market that we must take advantage of. It's a market that whose potential and opportunities we must recognize, especially now, when COVID has shown that supply chains have major challenges, when COVID has shown that we need to look at probably shorter supply chains and how we can take advantage of those. Now, the way this year's AGRF is structured is also quite innovative. We start off in the morning recognizing fully well that we want to cover the whole globe. At the same time, we start off in the morning with young people at 10 o'clock that come in and tell us what happened from the previous day and really find ways of exciting us. We go into what we call a culture track, and in that culture track, we show many things from different parts of the world, especially, of course, from different parts of Africa. The part that excites me the most is the chefs. Today we had a chef from Senegal showing us to cook a 5-minute dish from Senegal. Tomorrow we'll probably have a chef from Rwanda, but also the cultural dances and the opportunities that our countries have to offer. So that's what we do in the morning. Then we follow that up with parallel sessions, recognizing very well that the virtual environment can be very intense and very difficult to manage sometimes. So we've reduced the number of engagements, but we do still have enough. So the first parallel sessions happen in the morning. In the afternoon, we have what we call policy symposiums. This is where we discuss critical issues. Right now, I'm coming from the conversation around feeding African cities and the findings of a major report that was just launched, the Africa Agricultural Status Report, which you will all have access to. So those kind of reports lead to decisions that we discuss and that we take into the presidential summit, which is happening on Friday. After the policy symposiums, we go into a plenary like this one. And after the plenary, we have what we call the red threads. Red threads are live discussions with His Excellency, Jeff Koinange here, so that we really get a group of people that really can energize us and keep us going. That part also recognizes that there are other parts of the world that are waking up. North America and other places, that's where they engage the most. After that, we have other forms of engagements, probably including going home early, because we are living in a situation where we need to go home early. So this is really what the AGRF is about. In terms of days, today we focus on resilience, tomorrow we focus on nutrition, the following day we focus on Thursday, we focus on trade and the opportunities that is in there. The last day we focus on the food systems. Now, as Jeff Koinange said, I'm the special envoy, the UN Secretary General's special envoy for food systems. This is a perspective that recognizes that our food systems do have opportunities, but there's also present challenges. How we produce food is part of how we have climate change. So we need to start finding ways of doing it better. So on Friday, we will discuss how we can do food systems better, how we can produce food better, and we will ensure that all the things we've been discussing will culminate into a presidential forum, a presidential discussion in the afternoon on Friday in the plenary. All the plenaries are in the afternoon so that the rest of the world can participate. So again, welcome to AGRF 2020. Welcome to a hybrid AGRF model in Rwanda. This is what we call it. You here in the room and millions of people out there logging in their rooms. We've already had logins that are much bigger than the physical presence we've had in many places. Already we have had about 10,000 people now seeing what we are doing. In the past, the most we were able to get in one event was 4,000 people when we were in Ghana last year. So again, welcome, and Your Excellency, welcome. Your Excellency is welcome, and we look forward to a great AGRF. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Kalibata. Looking forward to a great 4 days of action, knowledge. Thank you so much. And by the way, Dr. Kalibata, I blocked out my calendar for the next 5 years, okay? Just in case. Dr. Agnes Kalibata there. Give her a round of applause, please. As we do that, maybe we can change the mic and not waste too much time. Thank you very much. Up next, Dr. Geraldine Mukeshimana is the Minister of Agriculture and Livestock Resources here in the Republic of Rwanda. Now, prior to that, Dr. Mukeshimana worked at the International Livestock Research Institute, ILRI, and also at the National University here in Rwanda. She holds both a PhD and a master's in plant breeding genetics and biotechnical from Michigan State University, MSU. Dr. Geraldine Mukeshimana, the floor is yours.
Honorable Prime Minister of Rwanda, Your Excellency Hairy Mariam Desalegn, the Chair of AGRF Partner Group, Honorable Ministers present and the CEO of RDB, Excellencies, Ambassadors, and members of Diplomatic Corps, Dr. Kalibata, the President of AGRA, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, physical and virtual, good afternoon. Let me start by extending a very warm welcome to our physical and virtual guests. Once again, we thank you so much for giving Rwanda a second chance after 1 year to be again your hosts. We are very happy, we are delighted, and we are honored. Of course, this year we are hosting majority of our guests virtually because of the restrictions that the COVID-19 pandemic has imposed on all of us globally. We keep being grateful to the frontline health professionals and the scientific communities that are working tirelessly to keep us safe, but also working hard to find a vaccine for this pandemic. I also want to take this opportunity as mentioned before, to express my gratitude to the AGRF partner group to have selected Rwanda in September last year to be the forum's long-term home, at least for 5 years. This AGRF summit is one of the key moments that is going to define, or that is defining already, Africa, but most importantly, the future of Africa. According to recent reports, including those of OECD, the pace of urbanization in Africa has changed significantly, and its urbanization rate continued to grow among the fastest in the world regions in the coming years. The current Africa city market, Agnes has mentioned it, it represents 250 billion USD per year. This AGRF theme of today or this week, feeding the cities, grow the continent, leveraging urban food markets to achieve sustainable food system in Africa, it speaks to all of us. Feeding the cities is increasingly becoming a fundamental question, but some people like me, we barely take time to think about it. I remember last year when we were shaping up the theme of this year, I was hesitant to accept it. Then the people went, and then COVID came in, then they came up again, and then they told me this is the topic, and I just shut up. So I'm really glad that they managed to push me away. So the reason of that is once you keep working in this area, you become paranoid. And someone like me, I am all the time scared that there wouldn't be enough food for everyone in every single day. And I never think of the cities, I just think of Rwandans, rural and cities, all included. So, I have learned that when you think of a human life, it becomes equal to food. So this concept of feeding cities, I think it's shaping everyone, because 10,000 years ago, the food started creating communities and cities in the Fertile Crescent, where the early people decided to settle and produce their food. Since then, cities have continued to be shaped by food for their stability and growth. For cities, sufficient food has to be produced, and for this, urban agriculture is just a tiny part of the equation, as opposed to what majority of us think. It has to be transported, it has to be cooked, it has to be eaten, and sometimes it has to be disposed of. We know that currently there is so much food that is wasted. So I guess the mayor and the people who coordinate cities, they know how much all of this circle producing and getting food to the table requires an enormous amount of planning and coordination. My hope is that this summit is taking place in the middle of the COVID-19, in the context where the hunger on the continent was already rising, will come up with implementable tools for us to sustainably feed our continent. So, to our guests, those are physical and virtual. I also, once again, want to take this time and welcome you to Rwanda this whole week. Even being virtual, you are in Rwanda. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Geraldine Mukeshimana. And congratulations, by the way, for being voted top position in the Africa Union Agriculture Transformation Scorecard Biannual Review. Rwanda, #1. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome our next guest. He is His Excellency Hailemariam Desalegn, the board chair of the Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa and the Africa Green Revolution Forum Partners Group. Many of you are aware he is a former Prime Minister of Ethiopia from 2012 to 2018. He also previously served as Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs under Prime Minister Meles Zenawi, and was chairperson of the African Union and Dean of the Water Technical Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency Hailemariam Desalegn.
Thank you very much, moderator. Right Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Minister, dear colleagues attending this session, both physically and virtually. This year, we celebrate the 10th year anniversary of AGRF. It has been an exciting journey since we met for the first time in 2010 in Ghana under the theme, Investing in African Agriculture. The AGRF serves as the world's premier forum for advancing Africa's agricultural agenda. And at the turn of this 10th anniversary, the forum is committed to taking its agenda and impacts several notches higher. With 5 years left to achieve the vision and goals laid out in the Malabo Declaration, and 10 years left to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal, AGRF recognizes that it must drive a more international agenda with more partners. Because all of you can understand that we are only left with 5 years to achieve zero hunger in Africa as per the Malabo Declaration. But can we do that? And even the 10 years, when AGRF comes as 20 years anniversary, we have to make poverty, extreme poverty, eradicated from this globe. But can we do that? I think we have to redouble our efforts in making this. So this partnership is a very important platform in so doing. Through AGRF's year-round programs and annual AGRF summit, the forum will use its full weight, resources, and partnerships to energize political will and drive the actions required to overcome the major challenges affecting the agricultural sector. With the right policies, programs, and investments, the AGRF community and the stakeholders can grow Africa from the ground up to ensure this Africa's century, driving agricultural transformation at the heart of economic transformation. Mr. Prime Minister, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, since the first AGRF was held in Ghana in 2010, under the leadership of His Excellency President John Atta Mills, the forum has annually brought together heads of state, ministers, business leaders, development partner leadership, thought leaders, both from intellectual, academic, and research communities, farmer organization representatives, youth entrepreneurs, and other critical stakeholders to focus on the policies and actions needed to move the continental agenda forward. The forum was hosted by heads of state in Tanzania in 2012, Mozambique in 2013, Ethiopia in 2014, Zambia in 2015, Kenya in 2016, Ivory Coast in 2017, Rwanda in 2018, and Ghana in 2019. As my president said, maybe Kenya next time, in, next year, in 2021. I think these countries who are doubling hosting AGRF are those who are performing the best in Africa. Now, this is the second time in Rwanda. We did in Ghana the second time. And those who aspire to do that, I hope will take this advantage. The AGRF Partners Group, an alliance of partners that care about, commit to, and invest in Africa's agricultural transformation, is made up of a coalition of 23 leading actors in African agriculture. All of them focused on putting smallholder farmers at the center of the continent's growing economies. I would like to name all of them because it is important that everyone knows these partners. These include African Development Bank, AFDB, African Fertilizer and Agribusiness Partnership, AFAP, Alliance for a Green Revolution, my organization, AGRA, African Union, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, CGAIR, Corteva AgriScience, Technical Center for Agriculture and Rural Cooperation, CTA, Department for International Development UK, DFID, Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, FAO, IDH, the Sustainable Trade Initiative, Grow Africa, a center of excellence of the African Union Development Agency, AUDA, NEPAD, International Development Research Center, IDRC, International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, MasterCard Foundation, OCP Africa Group, Rockefeller Foundation, Southern African Confederation of Agricultural Unions, Senengeta, UPL, USAID, and Yara International ASA. The AGRF Secretariat is hosted by AGRA on behalf of the partners, and itself an African-led institution that works in 18 countries across the continent, including Rwanda, focused on putting farmers, smallholder farmers at the center of the continent's growing economies. I am honored and privileged to chair the AGRA board and serve as chair of the AGRF Partners Group. Your Excellencies, this is my first year in the process of AGRF Summit as board chair. However, I am not a newcomer. As former Prime Minister, my country had the honor of hosting the AGRF Summit in Ethiopia back in 2014 under the topic, Beyond the Tipping Point, a new vision and the strategies of inclusive and sustainable transformation. As Dr. Kalibata mentioned, one of the outcomes of this year's summit focuses on resilience, the ability to bounce back better after a shock. Ethiopia is a living example of the importance of investing in agriculture. The drought-induced famine in the mid-1980s took the lives of 1.2 million Ethiopians and left 200,000 children orphaned. But we have worked hard since then. We have bounced back better, and Ethiopia is now experiencing rapid economic growth and significant poverty reduction. There is There is still much work to be done, but we are moving in the right direction. Resilience is important in all African countries. Our food systems continue to be exposed to multiple shocks and stresses. 15 years ago, the desert locust plague caused US $2.5 billion in crop damage, and this year, in February, the locust swarms have re-emerged, causing significant damage as well. The fall armyworm is stressing our food systems. Left unattended, these worms can threaten the food security of more than 300 million Africans. Another stressor is climate change. Drought and flooding, both extreme, is becoming more and more common. It increases food insecurity and creates high food processes. And this year, South Africa's maize production was down 40% compared to the previous 5 years because of the 2015-16 El Nino-induced drought. The cyclone Idol displaced 2.2 million people last year and caused unprecedented infrastructure damage in Mozambique, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. Despite significant economic growth in Africa, as many as half of Africans, that is 676 million people, live in a moderate food insecurity where they do not have enough to eat at certain meals and occasionally go hungry. Paradoxically, obesity is rising, and when the pressing issue of health care comes, these are problems of nutrition, and we have to take care of them. Add to that the impacts of climate change and COVID-19 now, and food systems have been thoroughly challenged. It is therefore important that we work together to create resilient food systems that will enable us to absorb shocks and bounce back better. We can do that. As Africa, we feel so strongly about this. CADIP and the Malabo declarations are testimony to our commitment to agriculture, because we know that agriculture is indeed the surest path to inclusive economic growth, jobs creation, and dealing with many challenges around climate change, migration, and beyond. Evidence from around the world attests to this. No region, I repeat this, no region has built a modern economy without first strengthening the agricultural sector. This is true of both ancient economies and in modern times. In order to achieve our aspirations laid out in SDGs and Africa Agenda 2063, we must first and foremost achieve our agricultural goals and targets. We must ensure we drive agricultural transformation at the heart of our economic transformation. Few countries on the continent have demonstrated this, as well as Rwanda, which seems once again set to be recognized by the African Union as the country most on track with desired progress in the agricultural sector. A big applause to Rwanda. I am so glad that resilience is a key outcome for AGRF 2020. We need to invest in enterprises and innovations to build a more sustainable and inclusive future. Right Honorable Prime Minister, ministers, distinguished guests. AGRF is a mammoth undertaking. I am humbled by the commitment of our partners, and I would like to thank each and every one of them for their selfless contributions in the form of financial and material resources. We are delighted to partner with the government of Rwanda to advance this vision with many other African countries and our regions, and stakeholders across the continent, so we might achieve our collective vision. As a former Prime Minister, I know it takes a strong Ministry of Agriculture. And Minister, thank you for your coordination to see that our forum is as successful as it is now. And as well as it requires a whole government approach and set of partners to achieve impact at scale. This is why I am pleased to see the Right Honorable Prime Minister here with us this afternoon. While acknowledging the presence of our Right Honorable Prime Minister, however, before I hand over to His Excellency, the Prime Minister, let me take a moment to acknowledge the unwavering support we have received as AGRF partners from His Excellency, the President of Rwanda, President Paul Kagame. To recap, it was during his tenure as chairperson of the African Union that he promoted the monumental African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA. It is during his tenure that Rwanda has been ranked #1 in the African Union CAADP biannual review, and it is during his tenure that Rwanda has been crowned the home of the AGRF. Congratulations, and on behalf of AGRF partners, we salute your resolve to deliver on Africa's commitment in partnership with AGRF, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
And thank you, His Excellency Haile Mariam Desalegn. It's all about partnerships, like you said, and AGRF's 26 partners are all committed to Africa's agriculture and fulfilling AGRA's objectives. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, allow me now to call upon our fourth and final guest with his opening remarks here and officially welcoming you to Kigali and Rwanda. Now, the Right Honorable Edward Ngirente has been the Prime Minister of Rwanda since 2017. Before that, he held senior advisory positions at the World Bank and also here at the Rwandan Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the Prime Minister of the Republic of Rwanda. Those online don't have to wait, rise, but those here. Welcome, Prime Minister.
Good afternoon. Your Excellency Haile Mariam, former Prime Minister of the Federal Republic of Ethiopia and the chair of the AGRA Board and AGRF Partners Group, Dr. Agnes Kalibata, President of AGRA, and Special Envoy to the 2021 UN Food Systems Summit, honorable ministers and cabinet members, members of the diplomatic corps, development partners, distinguished participants following the AGRF 2020 Summit online. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this 10th edition of the African Green Revolution Summit. This summit is being held in a hybrid model because of the challenging times of COVID-19. I wish to start by recognizing the importance of this year's theme, as well as the 2020 African Agriculture Status Report, focusing on feeding Africa's cities. This year's forum is timely and as it discusses key policies and strategies to link our farmers with the growing urban food market. The rapid African urbanization offers both an opportunity and a challenge. First, the urban food market present the largest and the fastest growing commercial opportunity to African farmers, mainly smallholder ones. Africa needs not only to increase agricultural production, but also to address the infrastructural and food safety challenges to cope with the fast-growing urban food demand. Distinguished participants, Africa has made a lot of progress in transforming agriculture. However, we still have some challenges. For instance, fertilizer application in most African countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, is still very low. And as we know, average fertilizer application in sub-Saharan Africa is at 16 kilograms per hectare. And this is far away behind the world average of 144 kilograms per hectare, or the average, for example, in Southern of Asia, which is at 135 kilograms per hectare. It is imperative for African countries to increase the application of fertilizers in order to achieve sustained agricultural growth. There is a growing need to improve agricultural infrastructure in Africa. For example, building rural feeder roads will enable market access for rural small producers. Transport system should be streamlined to facilitate urban-rural linkage. This will increase rural farmers' income and make it possible for the urban consumers to get food at affordable prices. Intra-Africa food trade is also still low compared to other regions. African countries need to increase the value of trade in agriculture by creating conducive environments for cross-border trade. This will support the continent to achieve the target of tripling intra-Africa trade in agricultural commodities and services by the year 2025. Africa's population stands now at 1.2 billion people, and over 60% are below age of 25. This young African population is a key factor to turn around the agriculture sector in Africa. However, African youth do not consider agriculture as a profitable opportunity for their livelihood. We therefore need to keep on de-risking this sector so as to attract young people, especially by leveraging digital tools for agricultural transformation. Our continent is still facing a huge challenge of post-harvest losses. The total quantitative food loss in sub-Saharan Africa is estimated at 100 million metric tons per year, and this is huge. It is now imperative that we increase investment to improve and expand post-harvest handling facilities and technologies. This will reduce losses along all production and supply chains. Distinguished guests, 2 decades ago, Rwanda defined an inclusive development vision of where we wanted to be in the year 2020. To date, we have a new 30-year development strategy for the period up to 2050. In all these long-term development frameworks, rural and urban linkages through integrated development plan have been developed. They will also continue to be an integral part of the country development agenda. This year, the government of Rwanda revised its national land use master plan along with the city of Kigali Master Plan 2050, which was launched on the 4th of September 2020, a few days ago. These tools were set to guide Rwanda to achieve inclusive development in a broader context. Specifically, 47.2% of the country's surface land has been or will be allocated to agriculture and livestock. By implementing these tools and plans, Rwanda shall continue to focus on the following key points. One is increasing agricultural production and build a well-functioning rural sector which will support the whole value chain. For this, we are increasing investments in research and innovations. This will generate and disseminate new technologies to boost the overall agricultural production. Likewise, Rwanda is implementing policies to ensure that we have a well-functioning markets. This being done by strengthening institutions, governing land acquisition and use. We are also investing in post-harvest management and value addition facilities, as well as in rural-urban linkages mechanism. Distinguished guests, I wish to thank once again the AGRF Partners Group for selecting Rwanda as the long-term home for AGRF in the next 5 years. Rwanda is committed to partner with you in the achievement of AGRF strategic vision. It is on this note that I would like to end my remarks and officially declare the 2020 edition of African Green Revolution Summit open. I thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you very much for declaring this summit officially open. Thank you. And thank you for reminding us of the 4 critical outcomes of this summit, which are resilience, nutritious food, markets and trade, and food systems. Now, as has been said, this and subsequent sessions today, Tuesday the 8th of September 2020, will take a deep dive into issues of resilience in line with our overall theme, feed the cities, grow the continent, leveraging urban food markets to achieve sustainable food systems. As Prime Minister Hailemariam Desalegn said earlier, none of this would be possible without our partners here, partners who are committed and who care towards the transformation of this continent. Let's not forget the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, the FCDO, and new partners like Bayer AG and IKEA Foundation. Now, join us as we take this conversation global with the rest of our plenary session and hear more about resilience, bouncing back better post-COVID-19, and building a more sustainable and inclusive future. To lead us to this conversation, I turn to my colleague in London live, Femi Oke. But first, please take a look at this brief video.
The COVID-19 pandemic is a health crisis and a human crisis, threatening the food security, nutrition, and livelihoods of millions of people around the world. Prior to the onset of this pandemic, more than 690 million people were already identified as chronically food insecure. This includes more than 250 million people in Africa. Similarly, the number of children under the age of 5 years who are stunted now stands at 144 million. That is more than 1 in 5 children worldwide. 40% of these stunted children are in Africa. We need to act now to avoid this getting worse. If we do not, the number of people facing a food security crisis could double before the end of the year due to the impacts of COVID-19. But in this way, the COVID-19 pandemic is only further exposing existing challenges in our food systems. Food security and our food systems were already under strain. Conflict, natural disaster, climate change, and the arrival of pests and plagues were already undermining food security in many contexts. As we respond, we must keep this in mind. We need to tackle all the food security and nutrition dimensions of this crisis and the systems that underpin them. According to a policy brief from the UN Secretary General on the impact of COVID-19 on food security and nutrition, we must respond on 3 different levels. First, we need to mobilize to save lives and livelihoods, focusing attention where the risk is most acute. Second, we need to strengthen social protection systems for food security and nutrition, keeping hundreds of millions of people afloat for the duration of the current crisis and possibly beyond. Third, we need to look at how to recover better in the medium term and invest in a sustainable future. This is an opportunity to invest in more inclusive, environmentally sustainable, and resilient food systems. Africa has the opportunity to build back better with more interconnected food systems. We invite you to join AGRF and its partners to lead in this recovery. Join us to accelerate investments in our producers, enterprises, and innovations that will build a more inclusive, sustainable, and resilient future.
And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, in this digital era, there are hashtags we'd like you to quote. Hashtag AGRF 2020, hashtag Virtual Summit. Remember the theme for this year, Feed the Cities, Grow the Continent. We're going to be doing this every single day between now and Friday, so please join in. All of you online, please continue to join in as we now get ready to go live to London. My colleague, Femi Oke, is about to be on to continue this opening series.
I am the Cabinet Secretary responsible for industrialization, trade and enterprise development from the Republic of Kenya. I've had this job now for just the past 6 months, and before that I worked as the Principal Secretary in this ministry and in others, and 5 years before that I worked for the private sector in the Kenya Association of Manufacturers as the Chief Executive. Very, very happy to join this.
Good to have you. We will hear more from you in just a moment. I am introducing more eminent leaders so that you can marvel at how important they are before we dig deeper into our conversation about resilience, which is the theme of today's summit. Director Montesi, nice to see you. Introduce yourself.
Hello, Femi. Good morning to everyone. I am Carla Montesi from the European Commission, working in the Department of International Cooperation in charge of Big Data, Planet and Prosperity. I really honored to be with you today. Of course, I would like to be there in Rwanda to have the opportunity for personal interaction, but here we are. So let's have this conversation in the virtual way. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Kalavata, describe what we're doing right now is a home and away model. Now, it depends if you're in your home, but that's your home, and in Kigali may well be away, but we're doing a hybrid conference, hybrid summit. So whether you're in Kigali, wherever you are around the world, you can still be part of the AGRF 2020. So Dirk Schneider, nice to see you. Introduce yourself to our audience before we get our conversation started.
Hi, Femi, dear colleagues. Nice to be here on this interesting panel. I'm Dirk from Berlin, Germany. And for the sake of time, that's it. Thank you.
That's a very humble introduction. More from Dirk in just a moment. And Ted McKinney, good to have you. Introduce yourself.
Yes, Femi, thank you so much. I hope I'm coming through okay. It's a pleasure to be here. We in the U.S. are diving ever so deeper into the continent of Africa and AGRA particularly. My background, I serve as the Undersecretary for Trade and Foreign Agricultural Affairs for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. But my history in the corporate world and on the family farm involve all kinds of production: seed soybeans, seed corn, commercial corn, non-GMO, GMO, and the same goes for the corporate sector. So it's a thrill to be here. My prior assignment was as Director of the Department of Agriculture in the U.S. state of Indiana under a guy named Governor Mike Pence at the time. So thank you for including me.
Good to have you all. So AGRF 2020 delegates, nice to see you. Nice for you to be in this conversation. Hashtag AGRF 2020, hashtag Feed the Cities. Then you also are in this actual panel of eminent leaders. We are talking about building a sustainable and inclusive future on the African continent. Minister Minor, where should we start?
Everything starts at home. So I think that's one of the things that we really need to be working at. Agriculture is getting a new revival, and we really are excited about that. And many young people are getting into agriculture because of the recognition that people will always need to be fed. But we can also apply new technologies to this agriculture. The earlier session focused the launch of the report, agriculture report, focused on feeding cities. But I think underlying all this is that we must do this in a very sustainable manner. Fortunately for us, there are opportunities provided by technology to be able to do this in a sustainable manner. There are also opportunities provided by in addition to technology for farm practices. There's also lots of available technology for food preservation, which provides opportunities for industrialization, but also longevity of food. There's a lot of opportunities provided by trade as well. And I think the Africa Continental Free Trade Area provides great opportunities for us to become more self-sufficient in terms of food production within the continent. So the ministries of trade, the ministries of agriculture have a great responsibility in setting up the right policies, both from production side, from processing side, and also from trade, that can enable us to sustainably produce our produce food, and to trade it, and to ensure that the continent doesn't need to import food, that the continent and people in the continent don't need to go without food, because it is possible with the use of technology and with the use of trade to ensure that we have this access all over the continent. So sustainability will start at home, right here in Kenya for us, but also in the African continent, because of the application of the knowledge that we have, the innovations that we have, and utilizing our trade agreements to ensure that there is supply of food across the continent. Thank you. Femi, you're mute.
Thank you, Minister Minor. This is why you're a minister. You have a acute hearing and also observation. Minister Minor, as you were speaking, Ted was looking intent and leading forward. Ted, what were you thinking? Go ahead.
I think you called on me, Femi, so I'll take a shot at it. Well, first of all, I'm going to answer the same question. I have to agree that the farm, the home, is where it starts. Both the demand from the food, from moms, dads, kids alike, schools, academic institutions, all of us. But the connection is back to the farm, and that's where I'm so grateful, having grown up on a farm. I believe a great deal of the answer and the excitement that I'm hearing from so many in Africa is about the opportunity for innovation. Certainly following the sustainability principles. And most of us remember or know that those are a three-pillar. It's the environmental sustainability, of course. How can we reduce greenhouse gases, reduce inputs and the like? There's the social dimension. How do we do this in a society that is forthcoming and that is accepting of that? But many times, I think many parts of the world have forgotten the economic, and that's the part of the farmer. I mean, I cite some of the things coming out of our friends in the EU, where farmers were not even included in the discussion of the Farm to Fork initiative, which is surprising to me. And that's why I'm thrilled that so many in Africa have approached our country and so many others, or participated in Codex globally, so that it's a committee of one that's making some of these decisions. But I am thrilled, and I think that's one reason why we're so into both the conference. We're so into our Prosper Africa, the alliance with the Africa Union, your free trade agreement continent-wide. Just such an exciting time in Africa. And so count me as all in, but we have to go back to the principles of sustainability and the ability to meet each of those three pillars. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. Our theme today is about resilience. Director Montesi, how do you see resilience?
Maybe my answer will start immediately with what Ted just said. He mentioned the word of sustainability, and I think we need to start from there. I think that COVID made us realize how important is the well-functioning food system. And we are all speaking about building back better. And to do this after the COVID, we need really to invest in a broad sustainability agenda. What is that, this sustainability agenda? Ted just mentioned the 3 dimensions. We all fully agree with him. We need to translate the food system with a different perspective. The 3 perspectives, what we are mentioning: the human, the public health, decent livelihood, the perspective of the environmental health. And this is what we are trying to do with the Farm to Fork initiative that was just mentioned by Ted. We are really embedded these key priorities, moving the agriculture to food system. We have embedded this in this Farm to Fork strategy that is an important strand of our European Green Deal agenda. It's an agenda for the green growth. So we are talking also about not just environment, but we are talking about the social, we are talking about the economic. And I think that will be very, very important to move into this direction. So very happy we're talking about this now. We are just 1 year before the UN summit that Agnes Kalibata just mentioned in the opening speech. Let me say that we have a lot of expectation, and we really want to commit in order that this UN summit, that we will look to this transition to sustainable agenda, to a sustainable food system, will be very important, that we succeed to have a lot of outcomes from this. So we are really engaged on this.
Director Montesi, thank you. Introduction at the beginning. And you didn't talk about all the things that you were doing, particularly connected to SDG 2. I am going to let you take your moment, but we will come back to that. Our theme today is resilience. Our theme today is about building sustainability for a future for African agriculture and for the people of the African continent. Where do you want to take us?
Well, thank you. I would pick up, let's say, the ball from Carla. We think that the Farm to Fork strategy of the European Union is a very big step forward compared to what the European Union has been doing the recent decades. However, what is missing in the Farm to Fork, from our point of view, is a stronger focus on the external dimension of Farm to Fork. This is something we have to catch up a little bit. Talking resilience, I would follow Minister Maina and others that have been mentioning that we should keep in mind to have also resilient food markets. And since the conference is discussing leveraging urban food markets, we should put emphasis on how we could, for future crisis situations, improve the link between rural markets and urban markets. We, as German Development Corporation, are already investigating certain projects on how we could improve the administrative cooperation between urban and rural authorities, so that in future cases, the food supply for urban markets from the rural environment could be secured and not completely locked down.
Thank you, Dirk. Betty, let me bring you back into this conversation. It's really interesting that we have 3 Europeans in the conversation and an African minister. If you're looking at collaboration and partnership, and the AGRF 2020 is such a global event, how would you direct people who are ready and willing to help create a sustainable future for African agriculture?
Thank you very much. And I actually think Femi, Minister Mukeshimana might have joined us. I seem to see her on the screen. I think two things. Africa is ready and has been very ready for a long time to try and modernize its agriculture. I think we recognize that we will not rely on old technology and old practices, and also because of the youth, our younger population. So it's really possible right now to introduce and to work with modern ideas and modern approaches to farming. Availing the relevant technology is going to be critical. Enabling our young people to also engage in farming, not just for sustenance and subsistence, but to treat it as a business is another idea, because for a long time, we have treated farming in Africa as supply of food for the family alone without any commercial nature to it. But recognizing the fact that in Africa, we have lots of land, we have capacity not just to feed ourselves, but we have capacity to feed the world. So it is critical that we get, and I think for farming to become sustainable, we need to recognize that. But the third part is that we also need to recognize the role of trade. The most protected areas in trade and in negotiation, the most protracted conversations in trade negotiations are usually around agricultural products. But given that this is a comparative advantage by and large for Africa, it's also important to begin to really liberalize agricultural trade and to ensure that these possibilities of greater market access for African countries. And therefore, our colleagues in Europe, our colleagues in America, I know that your strongest lobbies are your agricultural lobbies, but I think given the fact that this is also a great possibility and great interest for Africa, we all need to look at agricultural markets with a lot more openness and depart from the level of protection that we often see in the developed countries. So it is, in my view, it is possible to expand our agricultural production because of greater markets.
Dr. Montesi, I'm going to ask Minister Mukeshimana to stand by and put your camera on and put your audio on so that I can come to you next, so that I can see you. But that was a direct challenge to European agricultural markets, and you would say what?
But I will say that I like very much what the minister just said. I think it's an essential point. We know, and we have listened by previous intervention about the challenges that Africa faces in feeding the growing cities. Of course, there are many challenges, including in infrastructure and logistics, but also in affordable prices. But let me say that there are also huge opportunities in sourcing the urban food from and within Africa. So, Minister just mentioned how important will be the regional integration, the regional trade. And this will give us a lot of opportunities for investment, innovation, job creation. So to work through food and taking using all the opportunities that are in Africa in the trade between African countries will be very, very important. On the point on the relation with Europe, let me say that we are doing with our partners and with the different African organizations an excellent work also on food standards, because that will be really very, very important that we succeed to increase the quality of the trade between African countries and between African and Europe. Of course, we really want to develop an inclusive and sustainable trade, and this is the reason why we are really using all the African organizations and working with the different partner organizations in order to fulfill all the food standards that will allow a clear trade between also Europe and the African countries. But regional integration will be key because there is enough food in Africa that can be produced in a sustainable way. So if we succeed the card of the regional integration, this will be give to all partners huge economic opportunities, huge growth, and this has to be the first point in the African agenda.
Dirk, I see you making a note. Ted, I see you nodding. Dirk, you go first. Ted, you go second.
Yeah, thank you very much. No, I'm fully in line with Carla. Probably it's about different approaches. I mean, better access for African agricultural products to Europe, but as well to North America is always to be kept on the screen. However, regional trade with agricultural products it could be, let's say, a blueprint for better developments. To give you an example, that's why we are thinking about a pilot project in Western Africa, where we're discussing to improve the regional trade with certain crops like rice and partnering with ECOWAS. Obviously, if such a pilot project runs successfully, it could be transferred to other regions. And I think that's a very hands-on idea, and we will report on that, and we hope for support of African institutions for it. Thank you.
Will I jump in there, Femi? Is this time?
Go ahead.
Very good. Well, I tell you, I think the discussion we're having here, it's hard to disagree with any of that. Let me just try to dive into some specifics. As I thought about this, and I talked with my colleagues across the USDA and much of U.S. agriculture, I talk with our farmers 3-4 times a week. I had 5 things down that I saw, and I hope for Africa. At least I hope for us to work with Africa on one. The first is clearly assistance in development, and I think that's already there, and perhaps we need to ramp that up. Our friends with USAID, my own group here at the Foreign Ag Service, it's going to be important to give that hand up, not the hand out. And it's important because our friends in Africa have shared that with me. But with that must be allowed their own choice in direction. We cannot, shall not mandate to our friends in Africa how they're going to produce. That's why we're so open in the US. If someone wants to grow organic, grow organic. If they want to use high tech, use high tech, and anything and everything in between. The second thing, and I think there's evidence of this, is dive even deeper on free trade agreements. That's why we're so excited about what might come from the Kenya-US free trade agreement. And the same goes for extension to other countries of Africa. We're very excited about that. And my team does all of the backroom numbers, figures, strategization about that. The third is probably a bit of a restatement, but it's so important. Opportunities for Africa that do not bind Africa, tie them or restrict their growth. And we're seeing elements of that from different parts of the world. We do not seek that. It's the way we behave on Codex. We work with Africa a great deal, but we start by saying, what do you think about this committee or that approval and the like? Finally, opportunities that allow an innovative spirit to go. I'm a big fan of Norman Borlaug, God rest his soul, the person that won the Nobel Peace Prize for the Green Revolution of the 1960s and 70s. I gave speeches as a young lad growing up in 4-H and FFA, 2 youth organizations, about him, and he became a friend of mine. And he always said, take it to the farmer. And I don't mean take it to him as in screw him, take it to the farmer and let them choose what's right for them. But so many parts of the world disallow different types of production. And we should not impose that on Africa. And finally, what can I say about sustainability? So I've got some examples to back that up, but I want to let others share some thoughts as well. We hope for a bright, open future where Africa gets to choose its methods and its form of trade with us. All very important.
Femi, you're still mute.
I see Minister Geraldine Mukashimana leaning into this conversation. She's the Minister of Agriculture and Animal Resources in Rwanda. Minister has been in both opening ceremonies. She's double tasking here, multitasking. Thank you for joining the Eminent Leaders conversation. What did you want to start us off with? What is on your mind right now in terms of resilience?
Thank you, Femi. I think what is really important is that our food systems become resilient. But with that, what do we mean by that? It means that we need to start by producing enough food and nutritious food and healthy food. That is enough by itself a big deal. After that, it's important that that food gets to where it's needed. It can be within countries, it can be within Africa, but also it can go beyond Africa. So the resilience means in a bigger context that the food should be available, it should be nutritious, it should be healthy, but also people need to be able to afford it. So the world spent a whole amount of time making food affordable. In Africa, when you look at what we are discussing today on the feeding the cities, at least we have even experienced it during the COVID-19, that when the informal sector of Africa suffered the most the food insecurity, even beyond the rural communities. What does it mean? It means that making a food affordable to everyone, it has to be another important aspect. But when you look at it, when we say informal jobs are suffering, it means also our food system need to be able to create quality jobs, because the ones who are during the lockdowns, the ones who were in quality jobs, they did not suffer as much as the informal jobs. So to me, the food production, the food transport, the food affordability, and the quality jobs that help people to afford food, I think those are really important. And they need to be sustainable because we need to leave them to our children and grandchildren. Thank you.
Minister, one of the reasons that Rwanda is now home to the AGRF is because of its commitment to developing agriculture. If you could articulate that commitment, what would we see practically right now? What would we see already happening in Rwanda?
Rwanda has been trying to move itself in all angles, because when you think of the rest of the countries, we sound to be like a very young country because we started almost at nothing in 1994 because the genocide against Tutsis destroyed everything. So we are under pressure to catch up with the rest of everyone. So that means it's not only agriculture that we are pushing forward. We are being pulled left and right to move everything so that we can be where everyone else is. That said, it's really important to have a high-level leadership commitment. And going down to agriculture, it's really important to have policies that are clear, that are shaping the food system all the way from the production to the plate, to the consumer. So that's why I say that it's not just agriculture, because in the middle of the production and the plate, there are so many pieces that needs to be put together so that the food system can be functional. So we are, as agricultural sector, struggling to increase our agricultural productivity in a sustainable way, trying to or smart agricultural technologies that you can have around so that we produce enough and sustainably. Mm-hmm. We are into, as the rest of Africa, dealing with the post-harvest loss reduction. We are into making our conditions, our environment conducive for investment so that we can have additional capital to flow into the system. So when you think of it, it's not just one sector doing things, it's the whole system working and putting together the pieces so that we can move forward. Thank you.
With this conversation of eminent leaders, we're talking about resilience. That is the theme for today at the AGRF 2020. We have eminent leaders in our Zoom room. I am going to ask them if you could ask one of the other eminent leaders a question, share an idea, share a thought. Dirk, who would you ask? And you can unmute yourself while you're thinking about who you would put that to. Go ahead, Dirk.
Thank you, Femi. You could be a minister.
Oh, I just gave you a promotion. Go ahead.
Well, I would pick up the last remark of Minister Mukeshimana, because she mentioned the formula farm to plate, where we in Europe call it farm to fork. I would be interested, let's say, where's the link between traditional ways of producing food and agricultural products in a smart way, and where how can it be combined with, let's say, more modern methods like using digitization, using urban agriculture, implementing the production of novel food. What are your thoughts about that?
Mm. Mr. Miner, do you want to take that one first of all?
I think it was to Geraldine.
Oh, to both of you. I'm going to make it to you first of all. Do you have a take on that?
No, I was actually, I have a take, but let Geraldine take it first.
Well, you are first. You're already there. So you go first, and then Geraldine will go second. I wanted to give Geraldine a little pause so she can have a rest. And then we'll go to the minister after you. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I think it is possible to, produce food a lot more sustainably. I think it is possible to, modernize agriculture. I think the incentive structure for young people, the incentive structure for this modernization needs to be very, very clear. And I think that's what we need to be working on, in ensuring that the necessary support structure for, high value agricultural production is in place. And I think that's where we keep coming back to the possibilities that are provided by technology, the possibilities that are provided by trade, because if there isn't any gain, it would be easy to put the land to something else, put the land to real estate or other rewarding ventures. So I think it is critical for us to ensure that food production is done in a manner that is actually commercially rewarding as well for those who engage in it.
Yeah. Minister Mukeshimana, what would you like to add to that?
I think saying the cohabitation of traditional food production and modern food production, I mean, traditional doesn't mean not sustainable or more sustainable, and modern doesn't mean not sustainable. So I think it's really important that we understand it that way, and then we leverage the needed science and technological tools to make sure that food is produced enough and food is affordable to the people who need it, and food is safe to the consumer. So I cannot say that Africa has its own traditional food production, because everyone in the world has his own traditional way of doing things. But given the scientific advancement, technological advancement, every civilization or every society have a role to find the balance. Otherwise, being held back and saying that you have to be lost in, to be looking at the difference between a modern and a traditional, it will not make sense as long as countries are not feeding themselves. The second way, every country has its own culture. And all the time there is a way of finding a balance on how things are done in coordination with the traditional cultures. So to me, the traditional agriculture, the modern agriculture, it doesn't mean so much as long as the three things: sufficient food, safe food, scientific tools are not included into the whole food system. So I cannot put traditional and modern into different baskets and say that it's easy to make progress. Thank you.
Director Montesi, if you were in Kigali, we would all be in a room together and then you would go and talk to your fellow panelists. Who would you go and talk to first if we were in a real life situation on the plenary? What would be the conversation you would want to have with them?
From all, I will say, and many thanks for the Minister Mukishimana. I think we have, as European Union, support strongly the government in Rwanda in the agricultural sector, looking and using all the available tools in our international cooperation to support the agricultural sector. So very happy that it's becoming a success story. And let me say to the Minister that we really want to continue to support now Rwanda into the next step, looking to the sustainability. But let me take a point that maybe the Minister already mentioned. It's the fact that let me say there will be no one size fits all looking to achieve this sustainability. So we really need to look country by country, to do an assessment, the countries by countries, depending on the kind of agriculture that is in each country, to identify in which way we can progress to the sustainability. So the challenges in any case will be, of course, focused on quality of food, quality of diets, quality in the way we produce it, we process it, we trade and we market. And this can be something that has to really link to a methodology, to an assessment, and the country by country. And link to your question to who will talk, I think we have to talk to everyone, to all the kind of organization. There are, let me say, excellent initiatives that are taken from African youth, African entrepreneurs, farmers organization, researcher. Really, the dialogue has to be really open because everyone can contribute to look and to progress into the sustainability of the food system.